So section 2.5 deals with describing property, property description. And this is the last section in unit 2. So we're almost there. That's a big meaty unit, obviously. But 2.5 deals with how do we talk about real estate. I mean, we talked about all the rules and laws and transferring title and ownership and all that sort of thing, but at some point we've got to progress to being able to actually write a sales contract that promises that we're selling this stuff, or write a lease that promises that we're going to rent this to somebody. And the truth is, anytime you're writing a contract, anytime you're writing an agreement, you have to be specific about what it is that you're selling, what it is that you're leasing, what it is that you're transferring ownership of. So we need a way to describe these pieces of land that is absolutely 100% always going to stay the same. Because the problem is the way we describe real estate to each other is not always the most continuously accurate way to describe real estate. I mean, think about if somebody asks you for directions to a certain place, you might say, oh yeah, we'll go down to the corner and make a right and it's the third house on the right. Well, what if somebody tears a house down? Is it still the third house on the right, or is it the second house on the right now? So that doesn't work as a description. And then we might say, oh, well, just give them the address. You know, we're selling 123 Main Street. We're transferring ownership of 123 Main Street. I'm sure some of you have experienced in the past a change of address where the property itself didn't change, but the Postal Service came along and renamed or renumbered the addresses. Any of you ever experienced that before, where you had the same property and all of a sudden they changed the address on the property? Well, yes. If we had put an address on the deed, would that create problems down the road when we were trying to create a chain of ownership? If the address that was on the deed was no longer the valid address of the property, there would be some question about, well, did we actually transfer ownership? So what we need is a way to describe or talk about this property that never changes. And that's what this section is about. That's called a legal description. A legal description is a permanent, never changing description of a piece of land. And so anytime we are selling that piece of land, anytime we are writing a contract that involves that piece of land, anytime that we are leasing that piece of land, we're always going to go back to that established legal description of the property. And we're going to talk about here in just a second, there are three main types or three main systems of legal description that get used, and they're called the meets and bounds system, which is the one that we use here in North Carolina most commonly. And then we're going to talk about the government rectangular survey system. And one of these we've already really talked about a lot, which is the reference to a recorded plat map. We looked at that earlier today. We talked about how you could take a plat map, which is just a map of what's a plat map is a picture of what? What magic word? What are we drawing a picture of when we record a plat map?
Subdivision.
A subdivision. So when we say reference to a recorded plat map, what we're saying is that plat map is already on file at the courthouse. It's publicly available. Here, go look at that plat map and lot number 160 on that plat map. That's the lot we're selling. So that's another way that we can use to refer back to property. The system that is the oldest available, and it's the one that is the basis for everything we do in North Carolina, is called the meets and bounds system of describing property. Meets and bounds. When you look at this picture that you see on the screen, the states that are colored in the light green are states that use the meets and bounds method of property description. Now on the test, they are going to randomly throw out state names for you and expect you to be able to identify whether they use meets and bounds or the government rectangular system. So you're going to have to make a list.
I did note cards.
You're going to have to make note cards for like all 50 states and put whether that's a meets and bounds state or a government rectangular. I'm kidding.
I think that was the hardest.
I'm really kidding. You do not have to do that. at all.
Oh my God, that's not even funny.
Yeah, you don't have to do that. No, it's actually really easy to remember. Actually, the meets and bounds system is used in the original 13 colonies plus Texas. Not that you need to know that, but those are the states that use the meets and bounds system. Meets and bounds is a very old system of describing property. The
Can you
rectangular,
just imagine their hearts like?
I know, poor thing. The rectangular survey system is a much more updated version of describing property that is much more commonly used in the United States. And those states that you see in yellow on here use the government rectangular survey. Now, let me point this out because I think that gets lost along the way. There is no state, none on this map, that uses both meets and bounds and the rectangular survey. This is an either or thing. You're either in a state that uses meets and bounds, or you're in a state that uses the rectangular survey to describe properties. Everybody okay with that statement? And just for reference purposes, which one are we? Are we in a meets and bounds state, or are we in a rectangular survey?
Meets and bounds.
We're in a meets and bounds state. Good. We're in a meets and bounds state. So what does it mean when we say that North Carolina is a meets and bounds state? Meets and bounds literally are just directions. Meets means distance, and bounds means direction. So when you talk about a meets and bounds property description, what you're actually describing with a meets and bounds property description is the outside boundary of the lot. You're basically starting at one corner of the lot and you're saying, okay, take a compass and look at the compass and go in this direction for 56 feet, and then stop and turn and go in this direction for 78 feet, and then stop and turn and go in this direction for 12 feet. And so it's just a way to take you around the perimeter, the outside boundary of the property. We use markers and monuments in the meets and bounds system. We start at a place called the point of beginning. That's the name of the place where we start with the meets and bounds property description. It starts at the point of beginning. So let me ask you something. If this is meant to take us around the perimeter, around the outside, where are we going to end up at?
The place where we started.
Right back where we started. We're just going to make a big circle, correct? Around the boundary of the property. That's correct. The idea of a meets and bounds property description. It basically points you to one corner, and then from there takes you on a trip around the boundaries of that property.
Going on a trip on
and
a
it-
favorite rocking ship.
And it does always go clockwise. Not that you need to know that. You start clockwise from the point of beginning, you work from there. Here's the good news for you all. Very rarely are you going to have to know more than that about the meets and bounds property description. That's what surveyors are for. That's why we hire surveyors, because they're experts at reading meets and bounds property descriptions and experts at. So if you want to know where the boundaries of a property are you going to get out there with a compass and a tape measure and try to map this out? Or are you going to recommend that your buyer or seller engage the services of somebody?
Hire a
Engage the
surveyor.
services.
Hire a surveyor. That is the purpose of a surveyor. A surveyor has nothing to do with the value of the property. A surveyor has nothing to do with, inspecting the structures on the property. A surveyor's only job is to mark the boundaries of the property. And the other thing that surveyors do for us when we're creating subdivisions is they're the ones who draw these plat maps. Surveyors are the ones who draw the plat maps for us when we are creating subdivisions. Now, the other system called the rectangular system or government rectangular system is used in almost all the rest of the country. And if you've ever flown across the Midwestern or Western United States, inevitably, when you look out the window of the plane, you see something that looks like this. Those of you who are from do I have any Midwesterners here? People who are from Chicago? Okay. So like when you drive around in the Midwest, it is very easy to navigate in most cities because most streets are laid out on a perfect grid pattern. Everything's a 90-degree angle. People that move from the Midwest, West to North Carolina, you can't figure out where you're going because none of our streets are a grid. They all like spaghetti junction intersect with each other. People ask me all the time, which way do I go on the belt line? I'm like, either way. Like, what do you mean? Like, it's a circle. It doesn't matter. You're either going the long way or the short way. There's no wrong way. You can't get lost. It's a circle. You get lost on a circle, something's wrong. And so, when you look at the Western United States, there's a reason that you see this grid work pattern. That is because this is how the land was surveyed out. It was surveyed out in a grid. And not that you need to know this, but it's actually Thomas Jefferson that came up with the original government rectangular survey system. Thomas Jefferson was also an architect and a surveyor. And he said, basically, why do we need to have oddly shaped pieces of property? Why can't we just divide pieces of property into rectangles and make all these rectangles be the same size? And that was the original idea of the government rectangular survey system. Now, I want to point something out to you on this map. These are really big things that I've drawn pictures of. Each one of these is called a township. And a township, from one side to the other, is always 6 miles in both directions. It's a 6-mile square. But by the way, if you're doing the math, if this is 6 miles and this is 6 miles, what's 6 times 6? How many square miles do we have in every township?
36.
36 square miles. So Thomas Jefferson did not stop there. Thomas Jefferson said, okay, well, that's too big of a piece of land. Nobody's going to buy 36 square miles. So what Thomas Jefferson did was created a grid work pattern within each township that basically divided the township. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oops, it's too many. My drawing skills are not the greatest today.
That's a given.
There we go. That divided the township into 36 equal sized squares. Each one of these is called a section. So which one is larger, a township or a section?
Township.
Township. How many sections are there in a township?
36.
36.
There are 36 sections in a township. That's exactly right when you look at that picture.
This is so easy to be able to take things and concur something else from what you already know. That's all.
So one section is also 1 square mile. Each one of those white boxes you see right there is 1 square mile. And then this number is going to be the most important number for understanding the government rectangular survey. A square mile or a section, you have to memorize this, is the same thing as 640 acres of land. One section contains 640 acres of land. And remember, there are 36 of those sections in a township. So is a township a huge piece of land, by the way?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
To give you an idea, to give you some perspective, an American football field, not a soccer field. Soccer field's a little bit larger, but a football field is about an acre. So one section is roughly the same size as 640 football fields. That's a lot of land. And that's one section. One township is 36 of those. So we're talking about huge pieces of land. Now, let me ask you all a question. Do you think that most people, this was what Thomas Jefferson came up with? Because in Thomas Jefferson's mind, if people are moving out to the Western United States, they're going to buy and want big pieces of land. So 640 acres made sense. And if somebody wanted, if they didn't really want to handle 640 acres, well, they could just get half of a section. How many acres would half of a section be?
320.
320. Or they would get a quarter of a section, which would be, if we did the math, 160 acres. You don't need to remember any of these numbers, but I'm just showing you how. Can you take that section and divide it down? Can we divide that section in half, for example? What do y'all think?
Yes.
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 Could we divide that section into quarters?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Folks, all the government rectangular survey does is breaks these sections down into smaller and smaller pieces.
But you couldn't break it into thirds, right?
No thirds, just halves and quarters.
Okay.
Just halves and quarters.
you.
We're only going to use halves and quarters. Okay. So if you can divide things by 2 or you can divide things by 4, you can do the government rectangular survey. The big key number to remember is that our breaking down always starts from the same number because we're always breaking down a section. How many acres is every section? That's the number you got to remember.
640.
640. That's the important number. And from there, you're doing half or you're doing a quarter. That's all you're doing. So I want you to look at this description. This is what a government rectangular survey description looks like over here on the left-hand side. And I'm going to read that out to you for a second. And you're going to be like, oh my God, that's the craziest shit I've ever seen in my life. And it's actually the easiest thing you're likely to ever see in your life. Look what it says. It says the northern half of the southern half of the southwestern quarter of the northeastern quarter of the eastern half of the southeastern quarter of section 18 township 3 and 4E. Folks, let me tell you how simple that really is. How big is section 18? How many acres?
640.
640. All you have to do, literally, is take and divide all those denominators into 640. You just take your calculator and you start hitting divided by, divided by, divided by, divided by. And once you've divided by all those numbers, you know the exact size of that lot that they're describing.
Oh, wow.
It is that easy. It is that easy. And it's always halves and quarters. Can you divide by 2 and divide by 4?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially with a calculator?
Mhm.
Then you are an expert on the government rectangular survey. How many of you think this would be a lot nicer if we did it this way here, after you've now seen how simplistic the approach actually is? This is so much easier than the meets and bounds property description. So when you look at one like this, I want you to figure this out real quickly. Okay. How many acres are located in the northwestern quarter of the southeastern quarter of the western half of the southern half of the southwestern quarter of section 22 township 3 north 4 east? So I want you to do the math on that.
2.5.
2.4. I mean 2.5.
2.5.
You start with 640 and you divide out. That's what it looks like to me.
2.5.
5 acres.
It is amazing how easy you make that.
Mm-hmm.
What do you divide by?
I went to class and it was a nightmare
Yeah,
figuring that out.
It's
640.
It was a nightmare trying to figure that out. And no one just simply said, divide your denominators.
Yep, just start with 640 and then take all those denominators all the way across. That's it.
So divide each denominator by 640.
No, 640 divided by the denominator. So start with 640 and then just keep hitting the divided by button, divided by, divided by, divided by, and putting in the denominators.
This makes me feel like I actually know math.
And that's literally all there is to it. So the only complication they could ever give you with that is they could put the word "and" in the middle of one of those descriptions. When they put the word "and" in there, mathematically, all they mean to do is add them together. So if they give you like this description and then they give you the word and then they give you this description, what do you think you're gonna do? Figure out this one, figure out that one, and do what with them?
Add them
Add
together.
it add it together.
So see if you can do that one. This is literally as complex as a government rectangular question can get.
Plus 3.
The 10.
Girl. That's what I got, 10.
10.
10.
I got 10 acres.
Mhm.
'Cause I got 5 up here and 5 down.
5 each one. 10. We got it.
Simple enough.
Wow. Yes.
Handle
I'm sorry,
that.
I'm sorry, I have a block today. I'm still not
That
getting
is
this.
amazing.
So after you divide everything by 640, then you add them all together?
No, don't divide everything by 640. You keep saying that, and I've corrected you 3 times, but I don't think it's sunk in.
No.
40 divided by.
Bye.
Right?
Start with 640,
Okay.
and then just hit the divided by and start typing in the denominator. So 640 divided by 2, and then hit the divided by button again, divided by 4, and then hit the divided by button again, divided by 2, and then hit the divided by button again, divided by 2, and then hit the divided by button again, divided by 4, equals, and that equals 5 acres right there.
So that is cumulative. You're not doing each separate, it's not a separate calculation. The
No.
one thing is all one calculation.
All one calculation. You
Now I get it.
just keep repetitively hitting the division button. Yep. Super straightforward. I mean, it's almost too easy because you feel like it couldn't be that easy, right? That's the problem with it.
That's right.
It's like, so like, no, that can't be it. And it is. That's it. Are we all good with those? Can we do those now? If you get one?
Yeah.
Okay, good,
Yes.
good. See, I like that. All right, I like that. Now, we mentioned earlier that another type of property description is called the reference to a recorded plat map, and that is by far the most commonly used one in developed areas, because in developed areas, almost all the land has been subdivided. In cities, almost all the land has been subdivided at some point. And when the land is subdivided, remember the owner, as they are subdividing, the developer is required to record a plat map. From that point forward, the easiest way to refer to that lot is simply to refer to that plat map. So if you go back, and so I'll pull this up again. Let me change my share here so I can see that again. If we go back to this same plat map, remember this is recorded at the county courthouse. So if we're selling a certain lot number on here, the easiest way to identify which lot we're selling is simply to say, go to Book of Maps 1979, page 764, which is listed right there. It tells us what page that you can find this map on. Go to Book of Maps, page 1979, page 764 at the Wake County Courthouse, lot number 161. That's all a reference to a recorded plat map is. Does that make sense for everybody? You're just saying to somebody, hey, rather than us sit here with this big long description of the property, why don't we just go look? Here's a map. Here's the property on the map, lot number, whatever. That is referring to a recorded plat map.
And that's on lot and block.
That's also called the lot and block system. That's a great question. I didn't hear who asked it, but it's a great question. That is also called the lot and block system. Yes.
I think it was William.
Me
Yes, it was.
add on here. That is also called the lot and block system. And those folks, And that's it for the three systems of management. We've got some math we're going to talk about here in the rest of this chapter, but that's it for the actual theory of describing property. Describing property is really straightforward. You're either going to give, if you're in a, there's one of three ways you can use to describe a piece of property on a legal document. You can give the meets and bounds description if you're in a state that uses meets and bounds. You can give the government rectangular system if you're in a state that uses the government rectangular survey, or you can refer to a recorded plat map in any state as long as the property has at some point been what? What would lead us to have a plat map to refer to? The property has to have been what?
Developed.
Developed, subdivided at some point,
Subdivided.
right? Are there going to be properties where you can't use the reference to a plat map? What do y'all think?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
because there will be some properties that have never been subdivided. And for those, you would have to go back to what system if you were here in North Carolina. So example, my family farm in Edgecombe County, never been subdivided. If you wanted to sell that farm, you're writing a contract for it tomorrow. What legal description would you have to put on the sales contract if you were going to sell that farm?
Meets and bounds.
Meets and bounds, because the only other available system in North Carolina, if you can't use a reference to a recorded plat map, is meets and bounds. But if you were selling my house in Cary, you have both options available. You could do the meets and bounds because every property has a meets and bounds description, or you could do the reference to a recorded plat map. Which one do you think is more convenient, easier to use if you have both of them available?
Plat map.
Plat map, for sure. The meets and bounds description is very detailed.
So for my own education here, in North Carolina, we have meets and bounds, we have the recorded plat map, but we do not have the governmental rectangular system in North Carolina.
Correct.
All right, thanks.
Correct. So the way to think about it is every property in North Carolina has a meets and bounds description. Most properties in North Carolina also have a reference to a recorded plat map, but not every property. Every property in Michigan has a government rectangular survey. Most properties have a reference to a recorded plat map. So if you're in Michigan, you would always look for a reference to a recorded plat map, just like you would here. But if you were selling a property in Michigan and you couldn't find a plat map, what system would you have to use to describe that property?
Rectangular.
The rectangular survey, because they don't use meets and bounds. Just like you could not use a rectangular survey description here in North Carolina because we don't use it. Is everybody okay on those?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's just a
Before,
I'm sorry.
when you get done with this, before you go to the math, I need to ask something.
Go for it.
It's kind of off topic.
Okay, well, we're about to go to the math, so go for it.
Okay. What is the word when somebody sits in and observes a class? It's not like you're
Auditing?
monitoring. Auditing. Thank you.
Auditing.
Sorry about that.
No problem. So now we have reached the math portion of the class of this chapter, and the math that we're going to deal with here in this chapter deals with converting acreage. It deals with area. It's area math. Area is always length times width. Now, you remember our friend, the TBar. Remember, we talked about how TBar helps you deal with a formula. Hopefully, you've already started to make peace with the TBar because it's just that visual tool that helps you understand where things are in relation to each other. Also tells you what math to do. And so this is just kind of a review of how the TBar works. The formula that we're going to use when we calculate square footage, which is area, surface area, is area in square feet is equal to what two things?
Length and
Length and width.
Length times width, right? Area is equal to length times width. And that's what that looks like when you throw it into a TBar. So based on that, you know, what's the area of a rectangular lot that has one side which measures 200 feet and another side which measures 412 feet? Well, 200 feet wide times 412 feet deep is going to be an area of what? If we do that, I think 82,400, right?
Yes.
That's 82,400 square feet if we multiply those. And of course, we know the nice thing about the TBar is that we can solve for anything. If they give us the area and then they give us the width, we could figure out the length because we know area is on top and width is on the bottom. Well, if they're top and bottom, are we multiplying or are we dividing?
Dividing.
We're dividing. So if we wanted to know if they gave us the area and they gave us the width, we could calculate the length by dividing if we wanted to. So that's just kind of a basic reminder about the TBar. More importantly, this is the TBar you're going to have to memorize for acreage conversions. Acreage and square footage are really just two ways of saying the same thing. They both measure area of land. Here's the difference. It's like I weigh myself in pounds or ounces. Now, I don't want to weigh myself in either measurement, but which measurement would be really ugly if I weighed myself in what?
Ounces.
An ounce. That would be a very large number, right? And so we use pounds to make the number seem smaller because there are 16 ounces in a pound. The same thing is true here with, and it's also true with like inches and feet. We could measure our height in inches, but we normally, I would say I'm 6'4", not I am 76 inches tall. Because, you know, we don't like to use big numbers. Square footage when you're dealing with land is a really big number. So to convert square footage back down to acreage, there is a magic number. And that magic number is 43,560. That is a number, a very important number that you are going to have to memorize for test taking purposes. And there is a way you can memorize 43,560 square feet in an acre. And that is by saying to yourself, I just saw 4 little old ladies who were going 35 and a 60. It has always worked for me. It will work for you as well. You know, if you want to do something else that works for sure, you know, but for me, I just saw 4 little old ladies going 35 and a 60. It just works. I don't know why, but it just, for most people, it sticks with them. And it's a way to remember, because then all you got to do is just put the numbers in order, you know, 4, 3, 5, 6, 0. And that's how many square feet there are in an acre. How many of you feel like you can do it with that, right? You can, that'll work for you. Okay. So 43,560 square feet in an acre. However, you have to memorize that. Now, when we look at it in the TBar, that's on the bottom. The total square footage is on the top. So in other words, if we were dealing with this formula and we were trying to figure out how many acres there were in something, acres is going to be equal to square footage. And are we dividing by or multiplying by 43,560? If we're trying to come up with acreage, are we taking square feet and dividing by 43,560 or square feet times 43,560?
Dividing.
We're dividing by. That's exactly right. Whereas if they give us acres and they want to know square footage, we would be taking acres and what?
Multiply.
And multiplying times 43,560. Are we all good on that so far?
Yes.
Okay. And so that's just the basic conversions. So I want you to take just a minute and do conversions here. And I've given you a blank sheet for each one, and we're just kind of gonna go through these one at a time. Let's convert 12 and a half acres to square feet. So they want to know square footage. We can fill in the 12.5 here. And what does the TBar quickly say that we're doing with the math?
Multiply.
So 12.5 times 43,560. That looks like 544,500
500.
square feet to me.
Mm-hmm.
Are we all okay with that number?
Yes.
Okay. This one says convert 1.5 acres to square feet. So I want to know this one. I got my 1.5 acres right there. Looks like I'm multiplying
65,340.
65,340.
Mm-hmm.
Easy enough, right?
Yeah.
0.25 acres, so a quarter of an acre. Well, 0.25 times 43,560. So a quarter of an acre is 10,890 square feet. If you ever were curious about how many square feet there were in a quarter of an acre, there you go. It's 10,890 square feet.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I always laugh when somebody tells me they have a 5,000 square foot house on a quarter of an acre. I'm like, you literally have half as much house as you have land. That's all you only have house. You have no, you have 5,000 square feet of house on 10,000 square feet of land. All right, so let's go the other way. This one says convert 172,800 square feet into acres. So in this one, I've got the 172,800 up here on the top. So what does that mean I'm going to be doing with it?
Divided for 43,560.
Divided by the 43,560, that's right. And so that gives me 3.96669. Now I will tell you, rounding, generally speaking, is not going to make much of a difference. I generally go 4 past the decimal. You can go 2 past, you can go 3 past, you can go 4 past, you can, whatever you want to do. Don't let the rounding mess with your head. You know, I just show 4 past the decimal because I figure that's far enough to be close for anybody. So the rounding's not going to matter one way or the other for you. The answers won't be that close on the test. That rounding matters. Convert 445,680 square feet to acres. So 445,680
1.022.
divided by 43,560.
10.23.
10.2314 acres, so a little over 10 acres.
Mhm.
And then this one's gonna be less than an acre. I got 14,520 square feet. And they want to know acres again, so I'm dividing 14,520 divided by
0.3333.
0.333.
Yep, so that's a third of an acre, right? 0.3333 acres. So that's how many square feet are in a third acre lot. Third acre is 14,500 and a quarter acre is 10,890. Pretty easy, right?
Mhm.
Yep.
So look at this question. This is an example of what you would probably see on a test that has to do with making these conversions. It says a property measures 510 feet wide by 920 feet deep and is being developed by a local builder. If the builder is planning on having 3 lots per acre, how many lots can be developed? First thing we got to do, folks, is we got to get to sort of a common language here. That they're saying 3 lots per acre. The problem is I have no idea how many acres I have. Does that make sense for everybody? That I need to, before I can figure out how many lots, I need to know how many acres working backwards. Is everybody with me on that?
Yep.
Yes, different units.
And the problem with figuring out how many acres is that they've given me the dimensions in feet. And I know if I take this property and I draw it for myself, and I know it's 510 by 920, if I multiply those things, that's going to give me square feet. Is everybody okay with that idea?
Yep.
Okay, so when I do 510 times 920, that gives me 469,200 as far as square footage. I can't really do anything with the square footage yet. What do I probably need to convert that to? Before I can do 3 lots per acre, I need to get out of square feet and get into what?
Divided by
Acres.
40,
I need to get into acreage, right? So I go back to my TBar. How do I convert to acreage if I know that my square footage is 469,200? Well, I divide by,
multiply
Divide.
by
Divide
43,560.
that's right, 469 divided 469,200 square feet divided by 43,560. That gives
1077.
me 10.7713 acres. Everybody okay with where that number comes from? Are we all there?
Yes.
Now, just one last hurdle to overcome. Once we know that we have a little over 10 acres, 10.77 acres, they told us that the developer is going to build how many lots for every acre we have?
3.
3
3
lots.
lots. 3 lots for every 1 acre. So does that sound to you like we would need to multiply the number of acres times 3 or divide the number of acres by 3? What do y'all think?
Divided.
Divide.
Divide it? So you think they're going to be fewer lots than there are acres, or are they going to be more lots than there are acres?
No, multiply.
Multiply.
More. So
Multiply.
multiply, because for every 1 acre, there are going to be what?
3 lots.
Lots.
3 lots.
So there's 3 times as many lots. Notice I said 3 times as many lots as there are acres. Does that make sense for everybody?
Yes.
Right? So that's going to be multiply by. And so, Alicia, if that trips you up, say it out loud to yourself. There are 3 times as many lots as there are acres. If you say that in the back of your head, doesn't it tell you what math you need to do? There are 3 times as many lots as there are acres. So that's 3 times the number of acres. Does that help? See where that
Yes.
comes from? And so when you
Yes.
say it like that, we're going to be multiplying times 3. That's 32 lots. Does everybody see where 32 lots comes from?
Yes.
Yes.
And that's about as advanced as an acreage question we'll get on the test, honestly.
That's crazy.
We need to practice more.
So Rachel asked, could I do one from start to finish? Why don't I let you do one from start to finish? Why has it got to be me? I don't want to do all the damn work. What if we say a developer is building 4 lots per acre on a parcel that measures 1,254 feet deep.
If you want to put your head back, Rudy, rest your head.
840 feet wide. How many lots? So there's a question right there. A developer is building 4 lots per acre on a parcel that measures 1,250. That's a 4. Fix that. 1,254 feet deep and 840 feet wide. How many lots can they develop? I'll give you about to take about 4 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, and see what you can do with that. All right, so let's take a look at these in pieces here. For square footage, does everybody agree that I'm gonna do 840 times 1254? How do we all feel about that?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and I came up with 1,053,360
360.
per square feet. Is everybody okay with that number? Do we know where that one came from?
Mhm.
Okay. And my next step was I wanted to convert that over into acreage. So to convert that over into acreage, and I'll try to change colors on each step along the way here, I took the 1,053,360 and divided it by 43,560. How do we all feel about that to convert it to acres? Are we all comfortable with that?
Yep.
Yes.
And for me, that gave me 24.1818 acres. Everybody okay with that number?
Yes.
Yes.
But the question wants to know how many lots. And so for how many lots, I need to take a look at, well, there are 24.1818 acres.
63. Oh,
And there
wow.
are 4 times as many lots as there are acres. So what am I going to do?
4
Times by
4 times 4.
Times by 4, right? So multiply by 4.
263.
And that gives me 96 point whatever, don't care
72,
lots. So
72.
96 lots.
I got it
96.
right.
How many of you feel accomplished when you can do something like that, right?
Mhm.
That's as complex as they get, folks, as far as acreage conversion goes. There's another math topic out of the way. And see, y'all told me the math was going to be hard. Okay, good.
I'm still Trav, excuse me. I'm still confused a little bit about how you get to the, I understand when you say there's 4 times as many lots.
Yep.
Is that what you said? There's 4 times as many lots because it says there's 4 lots.
Yep.
If that had said 2, you'd say there's two times as many lots.
That's right. If I said 2 lots per acre, I would say there's 2 times as many lots. If I had said there's 6 lots per acre, it'd be 6 times as many lots as there are acres. It means for every single acre, there's 4 lots.
Okay, I got you now, I think. Okay.
All right, so that's it. And that's it for that section too. That's section 2.5. That's all of it. Alicia, you had a question?
I do. So is there ever going to be a time where we are required to divide to get the answer, or is it safe to assume that we should always just remember to multiply? That last section.
On a question like that, what if it said that there were 2 acres per lot? So would there be more lots or more acres?
More acres.
So then you would need to divide the acres to get to the number of lots. If each lot, so here's the way you look at it. If the lots are bigger than an acre, you're going to be dividing to get down to a smaller number. If the lots are less than an acre, you're going to be multiplying to get to a bigger number. So 4 lots per acre, those are small lots. You need to multiply because you're going to have a lot of lots. 4 acres per lot, you need to be dividing because those are going to be really big lots. You're not going to have very many lots.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Did that help?
It does.
Okay. So, I mean, one way to remember it, if you just want to kind of give yourself a guidepost, is if the lots are bigger than 1 acre, you're going to be dividing because you're going to have a small number of big lots. If the lots are smaller than an acre, you're going to be multiplying because you're going to have a lot of small lots.
Mhm.
And that's it for that section, folks. That takes us through section 2.5. And gosh, more importantly, I guess that takes us through all of unit 2, right?
Fun.